Long before Oxford or Harvard, a different kind of learning flourished in a distant land. Imagine education as a sacred pilgrimage of the soul, where knowledge was divine. Today, we explore ancient Indian education, from forest gurukuls to great universities. This is a story of truth, nurturing mind, body, and spirit. We journey to Takshashila and Nalanda, drawing scholars from across the world. These universities were global melting pots, advancing knowledge in diverse fields. Here, education was a way of life, with gurus as spiritual guides. Join us to reveal a golden age whose ideals resonate even today. In the ancient Indian worldview, education, or vidya, was a profound endeavor. It was seen as a sacred duty, a dharma, that led to liberation, or moksha. The ultimate goal was to know the self. The pursuit of knowledge was considered the highest virtue, to dispel ignorance. Teachers were revered, and learning centers were treated as holy ground. Learning was linked with ethics, and virtues like humility were essential. The curriculum was holistic, integrating intellectual, ethical, and spiritual practices. The aim was to produce wise and compassionate human beings. This gave rise to a unique relationship between teacher and student. It was a deep, personal, and spiritual bond. The physical spaces where learning occurred in ancient India were as varied and awe-inspiring as the knowledge they housed. The earliest and most iconic of these were the gurukuls, nestled deep within the tranquility of nature. Imagine a small hermitage, or ashram, set in a peaceful forest clearing, far from the clamor of cities and towns. Here, under the shade of ancient banyan trees, and by the banks of gently flowing rivers, students lived and learned. This was a deliberate choice. The forest was seen as the ultimate teacher, a living library of wisdom. It taught students to be observant, resilient, and in tune with the rhythms of the natural world, fostering a sense of harmony between humanity and the environment. As society evolved and kingdoms grew, these simple forest schools began to give way to more structured and larger institutions. Temples or mandirs, which were the cultural and social hubs of towns and villages, often doubled as centers of learning. These gatikas or mathas, attached to temples, offered education in scriptures, philosophy, logic, and literature. They were often supported by royal patronage and community donations, making knowledge accessible to a wider audience. This transition marked a significant step, moving education from the secluded forest to the heart of the community, integrating it more closely with daily life and the governance of the state. The pinnacle of this evolution was the emergence of the great residential universities, known as Mahaviharas. Originally Buddhist monasteries, these institutions blossomed into magnificent centers of higher learning that were unparalleled in the ancient world. The names of Takshashila, Nalanda, and Vikramashila resonate through history as beacons of intellectual light. These were not just collections of buildings, they were sprawling, meticulously planned academic cities. They featured towering pagodas, vast libraries filled with thousands of manuscripts, observatories for studying the stars, grand debate halls, and residential quarters that housed thousands of teachers and students from across Asia in a vibrant, multicultural community. This diverse landscape of learning, from the humble gurukul to the grand Mahavihara, demonstrates a system that was both adaptable and ambitious. It catered to different needs and scales, from the intimate one-on-one mentorship in the forest to the mass-scale specialized education in the university cities. Each type of institution had its unique character and purpose, yet all were united by the common goal of pursuing knowledge as a path to enlightenment. This physical journey from the simplicity of the ashram to the complexity of the university mirrors the intellectual journey of the civilization itself, one that continually sought to expand its horizons while remaining rooted in its foundational spiritual values. In ancient India, a student's life, or brahmachari, was a transformative journey that began with the Upanayana ceremony. Accepted by a guru, students lived a simple, austere life in a gurukul. Days began with prayers and chores, fostering humility and self-reliance. Learning was oral, emphasizing memorization and discussion of sacred texts. Debates encouraged analysis and understanding. Upon mastery, the guru would decide when the student was ready to return to society, offering Guru Dakshina as gratitude. The student emerged disciplined, enlightened, and ready to serve. Exploring ancient Indian education uncovers a legacy relevant to our world. In an age of commercialization, the ancient Indian model offers an alternative vision. It reminds us that education prepares us for life, not just a career. This holistic approach challenges us to rethink what a good education truly means. The emphasis on harmony with nature provides a timeless lesson in environmental consciousness. The focus on character building offers an antidote to prioritizing personal gain. Takshashila and Nalanda dismantle the myth that intellectual exchange is purely modern. Their legacy reminds us of India's history as a global leader in education. This journey into India's past helps us understand our roots to navigate our future. By studying this history, we can build new, globally competitive and humanistic educational models. The journey into the Gurukul system began with a profound calling. Imagine a child reaching an age where play gives way to purpose. This transition was marked by the sacred Upanayana ceremony, signifying a spiritual rebirth. The disciple would leave home to embark on an adventure in learning. Their destination, the guru's ashram, nestled in the wilderness, far from urban distractions. This journey mirrored an inner one, towards knowledge and self-discovery. The forest was an active participant in education. Wisdom was sought in serenity, where the mind could become still. Upon arrival, the student was formally accepted by the guru, an act of trust and commitment. Distinctions of caste and wealth were shed, fostering equality and camaraderie. Life was structured to strip away the ego and build character. Their new home was a self-sustaining community. This immersion transformed a child into a seeker of profound knowledge. At the heart of the Gurukul system was the sacred Guru-Shishya Parampara. This was a deep, personal and spiritual bond. The guru was a spiritual guide, responsible for the student's complete development, intellectual, moral and spiritual. Built on trust and respect, this relationship often lasted a lifetime. The student approached the guru with humility, offering selfless service. This purified the student's mind, preparing them to receive profound teachings. Knowledge transmission was intimate and personalized, tailored to each student's needs. Teaching happened in informal settings, imparting life-altering insights. This sacred bond ensured knowledge was passed down as a living tradition. The guru, guardian of this flame, passed it on to deserving students, ensuring its light for future generations. The Gurukul's curriculum was vast, designed to nurture every facet of a student's being. Foundational texts included the Vedas, containing hymns, philosophies, and rituals. Students mastered these texts, along with phonetics, ritual, grammar, etymology, meter, and astronomy. The curriculum encompassed a range of subjects, reflecting a deep curiosity about the world. Nature itself was a grand textbook. This interplay between theory and practice ensured learning was deeply internalized. Everything was part of a unified web of knowledge, leading to understanding truth. The Gurukul curriculum was, in essence, a curriculum for life itself. In an age before printing presses and mass-produced books, knowledge in the Gurukul was transmitted through a powerful and sophisticated oral tradition. This was not a limitation, but a deliberate methodology, an alchemical process that transformed the very act of learning. The primary mode of instruction was Shruti, which means that which is heard. The guru would recite verses from the sacred texts, and the students, with intense concentration, would listen and commit them to memory. This process, known as Adhyayan, was far more than simple memorization. It was a deep acoustic immersion into the subject matter, where the sound, rhythm, and vibration of the words were considered as important as their literal meaning. This reliance on oral transmission cultivated extraordinary mental faculties. Students developed phenomenal powers of memory, capable of retaining vast libraries of knowledge, entire scriptures, complex grammatical treatises, and epic poems within their minds. But beyond memory, this method trained the mind in deep listening and concentration. To accurately capture the subtle nuances of pronunciation and intonation, the student had to be completely present and attentive, filtering out all distractions. This mental discipline was considered a form of yoga in itself, a training that prepared the mind for higher states of meditation and insight. The mind of a gurukul student was a finely honed instrument, precise and powerful. After the stage of listening and memorization came the crucial stage of reflection and understanding, known as manana. Here, the student was not expected to passively accept what they had learned. Instead, they were encouraged to contemplate its meaning, to analyze it from different perspectives, and to question it. This was the time for vigorous debate and discussion, or shastrartha. The guru would pose complex questions, and students would engage in intellectual sparring matches, defending their positions with logic and textual evidence. This dynamic process ensured that knowledge was not just stored in the memory, but was truly understood, assimilated, and integrated into the student's own intellect. It transformed memorized information into living wisdom. The final stage of this oral alchemy was nididhyasana, or contemplative meditation. This involved taking the knowledge that had been heard and understood and internalizing it to the point where it became a direct experiential truth. It was the process of transforming intellectual understanding into realized wisdom, where the teachings were no longer external concepts, but an integral part of one's own consciousness. This three-step process of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana formed the backbone of the oral tradition. It was a complete system that engaged the whole person, ears, mind, and soul, ensuring that the knowledge passed down was not just preserved, but was revitalized and reborn within each new generation of disciples. Education in a gurukul built character and intellect. The environment forged discipline and self-control. Brahmacharya conserved energies for acquiring knowledge. The ashram's lifestyle cultivated inner strength. Dharma, one's righteous duty, framed every action. The daily routine forged discipline. This built a resilient and focused mind. Cultivating virtues was paramount. The goal, a sharp intellect and an unshakable moral core. After years, sometimes more than a decade, of intensive learning, the student's time at the gurukul would draw to a close. This conclusion was not marked by examinations or certificates. It was a decision made by the guru, who would recognize when the student had achieved mastery and cultivated the wisdom to apply knowledge responsibly. When the guru was satisfied the education was complete, he would give his blessing for the samavartana, a ceremony marking their transition from brahmachari to snataka. The student would take a ritual bath, shed the simple robes of a disciple, and don new clothes, ready to re-enter the world as a householder. It was a moment of profound significance, filled with joy and sadness at leaving the beloved guru. The guru would offer his final parting advice, reminding the graduate of their duties to society and ancestors. Before departing, the graduate would make the guru Dakshina. This was not a tuition fee but a token of gratitude for the priceless gift of knowledge. A prince might offer land or gold, while a poor student might offer sandals or forest fruit. In some tales, gurus would ask for impossible tasks as Dakshina, testing courage and resourcefulness one last time. This underscored that knowledge cannot be bought, only earned. With their guru's blessings, the graduates would return to their towns and villages. They were transformed individuals, equipped with purpose, moral compass, and disciplined minds. They became scholars, priests, ministers, physicians, and artists, carrying the gurukul's light into society. The return of a snataka was cause for celebration, bringing wisdom to guide and enrich all lives, completing the sacred cycle of learning and service. Before Nalanda, Takshashila rose in the northwestern frontier of the Indian subcontinent. Around the 7th century BCE, it became what many consider the world's first international university. Takshashila was integrated into the city, a vibrant cosmopolitan melting pot. The city absorbed new ideas, cultures, and technologies, fostering a spirit of inquiry. It attracted the brightest minds who sought to become masters themselves, marking a pivotal moment in education. Takshashila influenced academic traditions for centuries, establishing a legacy as a city of scholars. Takshashila earned the title of the first global university because of its incredible diversity. Students flocked to its gates from across the Indian subcontinent and beyond. This created a multicultural student body, coexisting in the shared pursuit of knowledge. This constant cross-pollination of ideas was Takshashila's unique strength. The curriculum was broad and inclusive, with subjects of international relevance given prominence. Takshashila offered practical knowledge applicable in a wider, interconnected world. Graduates became cultural ambassadors, fostering goodwill between their nations and India. Takshashila was a place where the world came to learn from India. Unlike structured universities such as Nalanda, Takshashila operated on a more organic model. There was no central administration. The university was a loose confederation of individual schools, each run by a master in their field. These masters, or gurus, were the pillars of the institution. Their reputation drew students from across the world. The campus of Takshashila was the city itself, a university without walls. Instead of enrolling in the university, students sought out a specific teacher. Acceptance was at the discretion of the guru. This ensured a personalized, master-apprentice style of learning. There was no fixed tuition fee. This flexible system made education accessible to dedicated students. This decentralized structure gave the masters complete academic freedom. This autonomy allowed for incredible specialization and depth of knowledge. This unique model was the secret to Takshashila's success. Takshashila's soul resided in its intellectual giants. Panini, the linguistic genius, whose Ashtadhyayi codified Sanskrit grammar with unparalleled precision, and Chanakya, the strategist whose Arthashastra shaped empires. Their presence elevated Takshashila, transforming it into a beacon of wisdom and mastery. Takshashila's curriculum was vast, reflecting a society valuing spiritual inquiry and worldly knowledge. Medicine was a celebrated faculty. Its medical school was renowned across Asia. Surgical training was remarkably advanced. Aspiring surgeons learned intricate procedures like craniotomy and cataract removal. Military science attracted princes, learning strategy and warfare. Students could also study music, dance, and the arts. Takshashila explored every branch of knowledge. This holistic, specialized education embraced the full spectrum of human endeavor. Takshashila was a true university, where all knowledge could be pursued at the highest level. For nearly 1,000 years, Takshashila stood as a beacon of learning. Its strategic location, however, proved to be its greatest vulnerability. The city witnessed the clash of empires. Political instability slowly eroded the foundations of the academic center. The final blow came in the 5th century CE with the devastating Huna invasions. They were plunderers who razed cities. The schools were destroyed and the great libraries put to the torch. The destruction was so complete that the city never recovered its former glory. The fall of Takshashila was a tragic loss. The titan of ancient learning had finally fallen. Though Takshashila crumbled, its intellectual legacy proved resilient. The knowledge nurtured there shaped science, politics, and culture for generations. Takshashila's model as a center for learning profoundly impacted education in India, influencing later universities. Takshashila's role as a bridge between civilizations left an indelible mark, influencing Persian and Greek thinking. Today, the ruins echo its profound legacy, reminding us of India's history as a global learning destination. Its rise and fall inspires us to build open institutions, while reminding us to protect these centers of light. The spirit of Takshashila endures. As Takshashila faded, Nalanda rose in Magadha. Founded in the 5th century CE, it was an academic city, not just a school. Royal support helped Nalanda grow into a great monastic complex. Situated near Rajagriha, visited by the Buddha and Mahavira, it was a sanctuary for learning. Designed as a self-contained world, it allowed scholars to dedicate their lives to study. It became the most prestigious learning center in Asia. Scholars from across Asia journeyed to Nalanda, carrying the torch of Indian learning to greater heights. To step into Nalanda at its peak would have been to enter a world of breathtaking scale. Chinese scholars described a vast walled campus that housed over 10,000 students and 2,000 teachers. This single, integrated residential university ensured education was completely free. The campus was a complete ecosystem designed for learning and spiritual growth. It fostered an unparalleled sense of academic community. This constant immersive intellectual exchange was the true magic of Nalanda. Gaining admission to Nalanda was no simple matter. It was a formidable challenge that tested the mettle of even the most brilliant scholars. The university's fame was so great that aspirants flocked to its gates from all over Asia, but only the most exceptional were allowed to enter. There was no formal application process as we know it today. Instead, every prospective student had to face the Dwarapala, or gatekeeper scholar. And this was not a mere guard, but a learned pandit, a master of logic and philosophy, whose role was to conduct a rigorous oral entrance examination. This examination honestly was legendary for its difficulty, serving as the first formidable barrier to entry into the hallowed precincts of the Mahavihara. The examination was an intense intellectual duel. The gatekeeper scholar would pose a series of profound and complex questions drawn from the deepest corners of Buddhist philosophy, logic, and metaphysics. The aspiring student had to answer these questions with clarity, precision, and logical consistency, demonstrating not just rote memorization, but a true and deep understanding of the subjects. According to the accounts of Xuanzang, the Chinese pilgrim who himself endured this test, the questions were so difficult that 7 or 8 out of every 10 applicants would be rejected at the gate. They would simply fail to answer and would have to leave in despair, their dreams of studying at the great university shattered. This incredibly stringent selection process ensured that the student body of Nalanda was of the highest possible caliber. Only the sharpest minds, the most dedicated and well-prepared scholars, could pass through its gates. This created an intellectual environment of unparalleled quality, a community of the best and the brightest. Once inside, students found themselves among peers who were their intellectual equals, fostering a climate of high-level debate and collaborative learning. The rigorous entrance exam was the foundation of Nalanda's academic excellence. By selecting only the elite, it ensured that the standards of teaching and discourse within its walls remained exceptionally high throughout its long history. The reputation of this difficult entry process only added to Nalanda's prestige. It became a symbol of the highest academic achievement. To be a student of Nalanda was to wear a badge of honor recognized throughout the scholarly world of Asia. The process also served a practical purpose. It ensured that new students were already well-versed in the foundational knowledge required for the advanced studies offered at the university. They were not coming to learn the basics, but to engage in postgraduate level research and debate. The gatekeeper was the guardian of Nalanda's intellectual sanctity, ensuring that only those truly worthy of the name scholar could enter its sacred world of learning. While Nalanda was founded as a center for Mahayana Buddhist studies, its curriculum evolved into a vast and comprehensive tapestry of knowledge, embracing a wide spectrum of subjects, both religious and secular. The heart of the curriculum was, of course, the deep study of Buddhist philosophy. Students would immerse themselves in the scriptures of different Buddhist schools, including the works of great thinkers like Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu. The study of logic, known as Hetu Vidya, was particularly emphasized, as it was the essential tool for debate and the critical analysis of philosophical texts. This rigorous training in logic and epistemology was a hallmark of a Nalanda education, producing some of the most formidable debaters in the ancient world. However, the intellectual horizons of Nalanda stretched far beyond theology. The university recognized that a true education required a broad foundation, and so it offered a rich and diverse range of secular subjects. The study of grammar, or Vyakarana, and linguistics was essential for the proper understanding of the sacred texts. The Vedas and their associated philosophies were also taught, allowing for a comparative study of different Indian philosophical traditions. This demonstrates a remarkable academic open-mindedness, where scholars were encouraged to understand and debate with competing schools of thought rather than ignoring them. It was a curriculum designed to create well-rounded intellectuals, not narrow-minded dogmatists. The sciences also held a place of honor within Nalanda's hallowed walls. The university was a major center for medical studies, building upon the rich tradition of Ayurveda. Students learned pharmacology, diagnosis, and treatment, and the university likely had its own medicinal gardens and infirmary where this knowledge could be put into practice. The science of astronomy, or Jyotisha, was also pursued, essential for maintaining an accurate calendar for religious festivals and for its philosophical implications. Furthermore, students studied mathematics, or Ganita, public administration, and the arts, ensuring a holistic education that prepared them for various roles in society, not just monastic life. This expansive curriculum made Nalanda a true university in the most profound sense of the word, a place where the universe of knowledge was open for exploration. It attracted students with diverse interests and ambitions. A monk from Tibet could come to study tantric philosophy, a prince from Java could learn the art of governance, and a scholar from Korea could delve into the intricacies of logic. The sheer breadth of subjects on offer, combined with the depth in which they were taught by world-renowned masters, is what cemented Nalanda's reputation as the supreme center of learning of its time, a place where any sincere seeker could quench their thirst for any kind of knowledge. The daily life of a student at Nalanda was a carefully orchestrated rhythm of study, contemplation, and community activity, designed to foster both intellectual growth and spiritual discipline. The day would begin before dawn, with the sound of a bell or a trumpet echoing through the courtyards of the Viharas. Students and monks would rise for their morning ablutions, followed by a period of meditation and chanting in the assembly halls or temples. This early morning practice was essential for calming the mind and setting a focused, contemplative tone for the day ahead. It was a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge at Nalanda was not merely an intellectual exercise, but a spiritual journey. The bulk of the day was dedicated to intense academic work. The accounts of Chinese pilgrims describe a packed schedule of more than 100 lectures and discussions happening simultaneously across the campus every single day. Students would attend sessions with their chosen teachers, poring over palm leaf manuscripts and engaging in detailed exegesis of the texts. These sessions were not passive. Students were expected to question, analyze, and debate the teachings. The air would be thick with intellectual energy as arguments were constructed and deconstructed with surgical precision, all guided by the principles of logic that were so central to the Nalanda method. It was a relentless and exhilarating routine of deep learning. Beyond the formal lectures, much of the learning happened through debate. The Shastrartha, or formal debate on philosophical principles, was a cornerstone of Nalanda's academic life. These were public events, often held in the evenings, where the university's greatest scholars would engage in intellectual combat, defending their theses against fierce opposition. These debates were a major spectacle, attracting large audiences of teachers and students. To win a debate at Nalanda was a mark of supreme intellectual achievement. This culture of constant questioning and argumentation ensured that knowledge was never taken for granted, but was continuously tested and refined in the crucible of logical inquiry. Amidst this rigorous academic schedule, there were also times for practical duties and quiet reflection. Students would participate in the daily chores of the monastery, copying manuscripts or tending to the gardens. The evenings might be spent in private study, memorizing texts learned during the day or in quiet meditation by the lotus ponds. Life at Nalanda was an immersive experience, a finely tuned balance between structured learning, spirited debate, personal contemplation, and communal living. It was this all-encompassing rhythm that transformed students into the disciplined, erudite, and wise scholars for which Nalanda was world-renowned. At the heart of Nalanda's intellectual world stood its magnificent library, a complex so vast and important that it was given its own name, Dharmaganja, meaning the mountain of truth or treasury of Dharma. This was not a single building, but a compound of three great multi-storied edifices, each with a poetic name. The Ratnasagara, or Ocean of Jewels, the Ratnodadi, or Sea of Jewels, and the Ratnaranjaka, the Jewel Adorned. The Ratnasagara was said to be 9 stories high, a skyscraper of knowledge that soared towards the heavens, housing the most sacred and precious manuscripts. This library was the physical embodiment of Nalanda's accumulated wisdom, a repository of knowledge that was arguably the richest in the entire world at that time. The Dharmaganja contained hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, painstakingly copied by generations of monks onto fragile palm leaves and birch bark. These were not just Buddhist texts. The collection was encyclopedic, covering every subject taught at the university: logic, grammar, medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and literature. It held the collective knowledge of centuries of Indian thought, alongside priceless translations of texts from other cultures. The library was the university's brain and its heart, the primary resource that fueled its intense academic life. Scholars from across Asia made the long journey to Nalanda not just to study with its masters, but to gain access to the unparalleled treasures housed within this legendary library. Managing such a vast collection was a monumental task. An army of monk librarians was responsible for the meticulous work of preserving, cataloguing, and copying the manuscripts. The delicate palm leaves were susceptible to decay and insects, so constant recopying was essential to ensure the survival of the knowledge they contained. This act of copying was considered a sacred duty, a form of meditation that required immense patience and precision. These scribes were the unsung heroes of Nalanda, the silent guardians who ensured that the flame of knowledge could be passed down through the centuries. The library was a living, breathing organism, constantly growing as new texts were composed and acquired. The very existence of the Dharmaganja demonstrates the profound reverence for the written word that characterized the intellectual culture of Nalanda. While the oral tradition remained important, the university was fundamentally a text-based institution. The library was the ultimate authority, the place where arguments could be settled by referring to the recorded wisdom of the great sages and scholars of the past. It represented a shift towards a more scholastic, text-critical approach to learning. The Mountain of Truth was the foundation upon which Nalanda's entire intellectual edifice was built, a testament to its commitment to preserving and expanding the frontiers of human understanding. For over 7 centuries, Nalanda stood as a glorious monument to learning. In 1193 CE, an army led by Bakhtiar Khilji swept through Magadha. Nalanda was in their path of destruction. Thousands of monks and scholars were mercilessly slaughtered. It was a cataclysmic event against one of the world's greatest centers of culture and learning. Khilji's army set fire to the library. It burned for 3 whole months. An immeasurable treasure of human wisdom was turned to ash. This was an attack on the very mind of a civilization. The sack of Nalanda is a profound tragedy in world history. While Nalanda reigned supreme, it wasn't the only star. The Pala Empire fostered immense cultural growth. Under their reign, Vikramashila emerged, founded by King Dharmapala. It was established to complement Nalanda. Located atop a hill overlooking the Ganges, it was a fortress of knowledge. King Dharmapala ensured it rivaled Nalanda. Vikramashila became the leading center for Tantra, drawing scholars interested in direct realization. For 400 years, Vikramashila flourished alongside Nalanda. Vikramashila's rise added to the era's brilliance, demonstrating the Pala dynasty's commitment to education. What truly set Vikramashila apart from its esteemed sister Nalanda was its pioneering role as the foremost center for the study and practice of Vajrayana, or Tantric Buddhism. While Nalanda's curriculum was vast and encyclopedic, Vikramashila cultivated a deliberate specialization in these esoteric teachings, which were considered the most advanced and potent path to enlightenment. This focus gave the university a unique and powerful identity, attracting masters and students who were drawn to this path of profound ritual, complex visualization, and deep meditative practice. The very atmosphere of Vikramashila was charged with the energy of these advanced spiritual sciences, making it the undisputed global capital of tantric learning. The academic structure of the university was built around this specialization. The 6 colleges of Vikramashila were each presided over by a renowned scholar, known as a Gate Pandit, echoing the rigorous intellectual standards of Nalanda's gatekeepers. These masters were experts in different facets of Buddhist thought, but the central curriculum was heavily geared towards tantric philosophy and practice. Students would be initiated into complex mandalas, learn intricate ritual procedures, and study texts that explored the subtle energies of the body and mind. It was a highly practical and experiential education, one that required not just intellectual acumen, but immense personal discipline and the direct guidance of a qualified guru. The most famous scholar associated with Vikramashila, who embodies its tantric legacy, was the great master Atisha Dipankara Srijnana. In the 11th century, Atisha served as the abbot of Vikramashila, his fame as a scholar and realized master reaching far beyond the borders of India. It was from Vikramashila that he accepted a royal invitation to travel to Tibet, which was then experiencing a revival of Buddhism. Atisha's journey was a pivotal moment in history. He carried the refined teachings of Vikramashila to the Tibetan plateau, where he systematized the doctrine, reformed the monastic community, and laid the foundations for what would become Tibetan Buddhism as we know it today. Vikramashila, through Atisha, became the wellspring of Tibet's spiritual heritage. This focus on Tantra made Vikramashila a place of immense spiritual power and, to some, of mystery. The teachings were often secret, passed down directly from master to disciple, and were considered too potent for the unprepared mind. This gave the university an aura of exclusivity and profound sanctity. It was not just a place for learning about the path, it was a place for walking the path in its most intense and accelerated form. Vikramashila's unique identity as the great tantric university ensured its place in history, not as a shadow of Nalanda, but as a brilliant and distinct center of light with its own profound and enduring legacy. While the Pala kings fostered universities in the east, Vallabhi flourished in Saurashtra, Gujarat. As the Maitraka capital, it became a hub for trade, culture, and education. Vallabhi, like Nalanda, was a monastic institution known for Hinayana Buddhism. Visited by Yi Jing, it housed numerous monasteries. Supported by kings and merchants, Vallabhi drew students seeking traditional Buddhist teachings and secular knowledge. Graduates were valued in administration. The university declined with its patrons after Arab invasions, fading into obscurity. Vallabhi's story highlights the pan-Indian passion for creating world-class learning institutions. The Pala Empire's dedication to education extended beyond the celebrated institutions of Nalanda and Vikramashila. The same fertile ground of Magadha and Bengal gave rise to other significant monastic universities, creating a dense and interconnected network of learning. Among the most notable were Odantapuri and Somapura, two magnificent Mahaviharas that stood as testaments to the architectural and intellectual ambitions of the Pala era. Odantapuri, likely founded in the 8th century by King Gopala I, the first Pala ruler, was located in Bihar, not far from Nalanda. It was an enormous fortress-like monastery that was said to have housed an incredible 12,000 students at its peak. Odantapuri's grandeur was legendary, and it is believed to have served as the direct model for the first monastery ever built in Tibet, the Samye Monastery. This connection highlights the immense influence of these Pala institutions on the development of Buddhism across the Himalayas. While it was a major center of learning in its own right, Odantapuri's proximity to Nalanda meant it existed somewhat in its shadow. Nevertheless, it was a vital part of the regional academic ecosystem, likely serving as a preparatory institution for students who hoped to eventually gain admission into the more senior universities. Its library was also renowned, containing a vast collection of Brahminical as well as Buddhist works. Even more architecturally impressive was the Somapura Mahavihara, located in what is now Bangladesh. Founded by the great King Dharmapala, the same patron as Vikramashila, Somapura was one of the largest and most important monasteries in the Indian subcontinent. Its ruins, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, reveal a breathtakingly symmetrical and monumental structure. A gigantic central temple dominates a vast quadrangle, which is surrounded by the outer walls containing 177 individual cells for the resident monks. The sheer scale and perfection of its design make it one of the most remarkable monastic constructions in all of Asia, a true masterpiece of Pala architecture. Somapura was a major intellectual center, particularly renowned for its teachings in Dharma, but it also embraced Tantrism and influences from Jainism and Hinduism, reflecting the syncretic religious culture of the time. It served as a crucial link in the chain of learning that stretched across the Pala kingdom, facilitating the movement of scholars and ideas between Bengal, Bihar, and beyond. Tragically, both Odantapuri and Somapura met the same fate as their more famous counterparts. They were destroyed during the invasions led by Bakhtiar Khilji at the end of the 12th century, bringing a violent and abrupt end to these glorious chapters in the history of institutional learning. It is a mistake to view these great centers of learning, Nalanda, Vikramashila, Odantapuri, and Somapura, as isolated and competing entities. Instead, They formed a cohesive and deeply interconnected academic ecosystem, a woven network of scholarship that was actively managed and supported by their common patrons, the Pala kings. This network represented the pinnacle of the institutionalization of education in ancient India. The universities were not rivals in a destructive sense. Rather, they complemented each other, each with its own specialization and character, creating a diverse and robust system that catered to a wide range of intellectual and spiritual needs. This symbiotic relationship was the great strength of the Pala educational empire. A formal system of coordination existed between these Mahaviharas. The Pala state appointed senior scholars to oversee the network, ensuring a high standard of education was maintained across all institutions. There was a fluid movement of both teachers and students between the different centers. A student might begin their foundational studies at Odantapuri, move to Nalanda for advanced philosophy and logic, and then proceed to Vikramashila for specialized training in Tantra. This allowed for a truly comprehensive and tailored educational journey. The greatest scholars of the age, figures like Atisha, often held prestigious positions at multiple universities, simultaneously sharing their wisdom and fostering a sense of a unified scholarly community. This network also acted as a powerful engine for the preservation and dissemination of knowledge. The libraries of these institutions were in constant communication, sharing and copying manuscripts to ensure their survival and wider availability. When a new philosophical treatise was composed at Nalanda, copies would soon find their way to the libraries of Vikramashila and Somapura, where they would be studied and debated. This collaborative environment fostered a dynamic intellectual culture where ideas could be rapidly tested, refined, and spread. The entire Pala kingdom became a supercampus, a vast landscape dedicated to the life of the mind, with each Mahavihara acting as a vital node in this grand web of learning. The existence of this sophisticated network represents a level of state-sponsored educational planning that was unique in the ancient world. The Pala kings understood that fostering a rich intellectual culture required more than just patronizing a single institution. By building and supporting a diverse array of interconnected universities, they created a resilient and vibrant system that became the intellectual heart of the Buddhist world for 4 centuries. The tapestry of learning woven by these Mahaviharas was rich and complex, a collective achievement that stands as one of the most glorious legacies of ancient India, demonstrating a profound and systematic commitment to the advancement of human knowledge. The golden age of India's great Mahaviharas ended not with a whimper, but with a violent storm from the northwest. Waves of Turco-Afghan invasions swept across northern India, targeting Buddhist universities like Nalanda and Vikramashila. These centers, rich and unfortified, were destroyed. Monks slaughtered, libraries burned, and centuries of knowledge lost in days. Royal patronage vanished, land grants were seized, and the entire educational ecosystem collapsed almost overnight. The interconnected international network of learning was shattered, replaced by chaos and uncertainty. The era of India's grand universities ended in flames, marking a profound rupture in the nation's intellectual history. In the aftermath, new rulers built a different educational order, maktabs and madrasas, focused on Islamic sciences and Persianate culture. Madrasas in cities like Delhi and Agra trained scholars for the state, emphasizing Quranic studies, law and rational sciences inherited from the Islamic world. Mughal courts became centers of art, literature, and science, but this elite culture was confined to the nobility and conducted in Persian. The universal, pluralistic approach of Nalanda was replaced by a system tied to faith and imperial needs. The old pan-Indian network of learning fragmented, and Sanskrit's role faded as Persian became the new language of power. Education entered a new era, cosmopolitan, sophisticated but narrower and more exclusive than before. Despite the rise of Madrasas, traditional Indian education survived in the shadows. Gurukuls and pathshalas, now reliant on local support, continued teaching Sanskrit, logic and philosophy in villages and towns. The grand networks were gone, replaced by scattered independent schools, smaller but resilient. Regional languages and bhakti poetry flourished, spreading knowledge and spiritual ideas to the masses in their own tongues. Though fragmented and isolated, indigenous education adapted, keeping the thread of tradition alive in community and culture. The spirit of learning persisted, even as its forms changed. The next upheaval came with the British, who introduced English medium schools to serve colonial administration. Macaulay's Minute in 1835 shifted funding to Western-style education, sidelining madrasas and pathshalas. English became the key to social mobility, while Sanskrit and Persian receded into ritual and history. The new system produced a westernized elite, but severed India's link to much of its intellectual heritage. Education became a means to a job, not a quest for wisdom, and rote learning replaced critical inquiry. The colonial legacy reshaped Indian education, leaving challenges that persist today. Today, India stands at a crossroads, globalized, yet searching for its authentic educational voice. The ancient ideal of holistic learning, nurturing mind, body, and spirit, challenges our modern, fragmented approach. The Mahaviharas' legacy of openness and meritocracy inspires us to build inclusive, world-class institutions. Colonial-era habits of rote learning and cultural disconnect still linger, but there's a growing movement to reclaim indigenous wisdom. Understanding this journey of loss, adaptation, and resilience is key to shaping a future that is both modern and rooted. The enduring spirit of Indian learning calls for a new synthesis, globally relevant, yet authentically Indian. As India reclaims its place, the question of its educational future becomes paramount. Can the golden age of Indian learning ever rise again? The answer lies in resurrecting the spirit of ancient institutions. Reclaiming this legacy means fostering curiosity and critical thinking, moving away from an exam-oriented system. It requires emphasis on humanities, ethics, and arts, alongside science and technology. This would create a system that draws strength from its own deep roots. The Golden Age was the result of belief in the power of knowledge. By looking back, it can forge a path to become a global beacon of learning.